So why don't we go ahead and get started? It's great to see all of you. Welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. Today we're going to talk about the Salesforce Summer 23 release. It's upon us. Some orgs in the world have already begun being upgraded. There are 2 additional release windows when the rest of us will get updated, and we'll talk about that today. If it's your first time here, welcome to the dojo. The dojo and the name dojo in Japanese is just a place to learn the way. I spent 3 years in Japan and loved visiting dojos. I never visited a judo dojo, which is looks like that what this is. But interestingly, in my neighborhood was the top judo dojo in the country, and I never visited that one. They were all terrifying looking. They were this like enormous, all men with like bent up ears, and but I imagine this is what it would have looked like. So on the Dashboard Dojo, we're coming up on our 3-year anniversary. We have about 40 hours of recordings, and it's just on the Dashboard Dojo site. There's a link to recordings, and our most recent one was on security and permissions for reports and dashboards. So we'll do quick introductions. We'll talk about our sponsor. We'll dive into the updates for the Summer 23 release. I'll talk about my book for a moment. We'll talk about my upcoming training class. And then the next month's topic, we'll dive into multi-currency. So we have Kyle Shagnon from OpFocus, the events manager, hosting us today. Thank you, Kyle.
Always a pleasure.
And Kyle and I will be monitoring the chat. If you want to put a question in the chat, we could have you come off mute to ask your question as well. We'll just try to do our best to monitor the chat during the session. So this is me last week at Texas Dreamin'. So my name is David Carnes. I'm the founder and chairman of OpFocus, and also currently the Boston admin group leader. So there are over 1,000 user groups in the world. I just got off a call with the Salesforce community team, and people from all over the planet were dialed in, the community group leaders. It's been kind of a cool thing to be part of. So I'm sure that there's a community group that meets your interests somewhere nearby. It's been a lot of fun to be part of. So both Kyle and I work for OpFocus. OpFocus scales SaaS go-to-market operations. So we're a consulting firm. We've been working in the Salesforce space since 2006. All right, so what are we going to talk about? First, as always, how to get ready for a new release. So Salesforce has 3 releases a year. There's a bunch of ways to get up to speed on the new release. Another question we'll look to answer is how to know when your org is going to be updated or when it was updated. So there's just a couple things to know to figure that out. We'll then dive into the analytics tab. This is now GA, or generally available, in the Summer 23 release. It introduces a new feature called collections, which I think is a game changer, but there are a couple things to know about it. We'll also talk about mobile on the analytics tab on mobile. Then another feature that's being released is the embed collections into page layouts. So you could make collections available, essentially add a window to someone's collections and put that into a page layout. It does require CRM Analytics license though, and it took me a while to figure that one out, but I'll show you how I did. We have got a number of updates to dashboards in the summer release, and these are all focused on unlimited edition. So if you have the unlimited edition of Salesforce, you will now have up to 5 filters on a dashboard. You'll also have 2 new dashboard widgets. So in unlimited edition, the components that we've used for years, the word components, I don't remember a time when it wasn't called a component. Now in unlimited edition, all the components are called widgets, and they've introduced 2 new widgets for images and text. And if you saw when we did the spring release review, we talked about that as a beta feature, and they've made a couple of interesting improvements to those beta features for the GA release. The other thing, last summer, Salesforce introduced the ability to post reports into Slack. And I think that feature was called CRM Analytics for Slack. Now they've sort of taken another step, which is giving us the ability to post lightning dashboards in Slack. And there's a couple things that you need to do to get that enabled. We'll just talk about that. All right, so I'm going to look at the chat. Thank you, Kyle, for putting links in there. That's great.
Of course. Did you want to launch the poll on this side?
Oh, yes, let's do that. Thank you for reminding me. So I'm just curious, before we get started, have you logged into a pre-release sandbox or a pre-release org or a sandbox preview to play with Summer 23? How many of you have actually been out there playing? And no is a fine answer. Just curious where everybody's at with the new features. All right, so it looks like we're roughly at 20%, 25% who have played with the new features, and about 3/4 that have not played with the new features. So I think that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Kyle.
Of course.
And I guess I'm never clear. You did share that with everyone?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so I just need to close the window. Great. All right, so let's talk about getting ready for a new release. So Salesforce does this 3 times a year. This timeline looks pretty similar 3 times a year. There was actually a mistake when this first came out, and it's fixed on here. It was sort of a funny thing. They said the pre-release orgs were going to be available a week earlier than they ended up being, but ultimately they fixed that. So the first thing that hits with a new release, even before the release notes, is the ability to sign up for a pre-release org. Now, one of the funny realities of doing the Dashboard Dojo now for 3 years is that every release, the minute it's available, I sign up for a pre-release org, but they're trial orgs and they only last 30 days. So, of course, I went in to log into it last night and it's not available anymore because 30 days have gone by. But that's a problem I have. You guys don't have to have that problem. But so it starts off with the pre-release orgs. Then about a week later, the formal release notes come out. And there's sort of an interesting time in that first week where people are treasure hunting, looking for things. And I admit, I enjoy poking around and looking for, oh, that button didn't exist before. So reading the release notes is a good thing. We'll talk about the release notes in a minute. They tend to be 600 pages. So I don't, expect that anyone would read them cover to cover. But there can be good things in there that might be useful to you in managing your system. There is something else called the sandbox preview, and this is within your own orgs, within your own sandboxes. Weeks before the release goes live, the your sandboxes are updated. And this is intended to be helpful so that you could try out new things and decide what you might want to use before the actual release happens. Another thing that Salesforce has just introduced, they are introducing PowerPoint decks of the release notes. And I was making fun on Twitter that is the next thing going to be interpretive dance or something. Because basically they have release notes which you can read, and then they have now a PowerPoint deck, which is just another way of looking at the release notes. But some people are really excited to see that. So you can see here over to the right of this timeline that there are release weekends. So the May 19th, some of the orgs have already gone live on the Summer 23 release. Then June 2nd, then June 9th would be the next release windows. So one question you might have is, when does my org get updated? So the other thing that just happened, I forget which day it was. It was last week. Salesforce will typically do something called release readiness, and they record a webinar. It's live, but they'll record it, and you can go find that if you want to have somebody walking you through the new features. All right, so enough on that. But how do you know when your org is updated? So most users out of the box can see certain areas within setup. So if you go into setup, even if you're not a sysadmin, you might likely still be able to do this. If you go into setup, if you expand company settings and then click on company information, you can determine what instance of Salesforce are you on. So this particular org is North America 139. So there's hundreds of server nodes now. So once you know what server node you're on, then you can go to a website called status.salesforce.com, and you just type in that same list. So North America 139, and then you click the magnifying glass, and what it then shows you is a screen where you can see the current status, and that's the default tab. I didn't think to just show that. It doesn't show very much. You can see a history of different issues with that instance, but the one that you should be looking at is the maintenance tab. And if we look on the maintenance tab, not only can we see that this particular org is going to be updated June 3rd, it looks at midnight, so it's probably June 2nd at 11:59 is when this thing's, because I think on the preview window it said June 2nd, but that's when the summer major release will hit. Now, I did think to point out that you can also see when the winter 24 release will hit. So that in this particular org is October 7th. And you can even see as far out as the spring 24 release will be February 3rd. So these tend to stay pretty fixed over the years. Some things that might happen if you are on an older Salesforce instance, you might get moved to a newer Salesforce instance, and it might change the windows. I don't know how often that's happening. I think it's happened to OpFocus a number of times over the years, just as the global use of Salesforce has exploded. But so anyway, this is how you figure out when your org is updated with the release. All right, so let's talk about the analytics tab. So I view this as a game changer. I view this as a place that, you could at some point, for users that are not actively creating reports and dashboards, you could actually hide the reports and dashboards tabs and just use the analytics tabs, just the analytics tab. This is intended to be a one-stop shop, one-stop home for your reports, your dashboards, your folders, your favorites. And if you also happen to be a CRM Analytics license holder, those assets as well. So we can see in the screenshot here on the right that we have 3 tabs here: home, browse, favorites. You've got a list of collections. We'll talk about collections in a minute. Then you have a search feature right on top. Then you have some Salesforce curated lists. So if you pin a collection, that collection will appear on the left in the For You. Then there are items that are shared with you, then items created by you. And then down below, you've got a list of recents, and they're time bound. So today, last 7 days, last 30 days, something like that. And then you also have a list of favorites. So one thing to point out is, if I was in an org that had, 10,000 reports in it, I think the analytics tab would be pretty sweet. The search is far more powerful, and we'll take a look at why that's more powerful. I really see this as being like a really good gift to large Salesforce instances to just have this really powerful browse and search capabilities. One other thing that it introduces with this is within Salesforce Mobile, they've updated and given us access to the analytics tab if you use it. So how should we think about this? The analytics tab equals the reports tab plus the dashboards tab plus CRM Analytics if you have those licenses. You don't have to have CRM Analytics licenses, but if you do, then those assets appear here as well. And on the analytics tab, we can create dashboards, we can create reports, we can create folders, and we can see in here an app is related to CRM Analytics, a component is related to CRM Analytics. There's also dashboards within CRM Analytics, and then down below, for regular old Salesforce reports and dashboards, we have reports, folders, and dashboards. We can also manage items on the analytics tab. So you can share, you can add things to collections, you can edit reports and dashboards, you can move them folder to folder, you can subscribe, you can export reports. If it's in a folder that you have managed permissions on, or you own the folder, you could also delete the asset as well. The other thing that we can do on the analytics tab is we can run reports and dashboards, and we basically see them and stay on the analytics tab when we do that. So we're not moving off. Salesforce is basically, it's kind of like iframed into the analytics tab when you run reports and dashboards. And this is kind of an important thing about thinking about, do I really need the reports tab on its own plus the dashboards tab on its own, or could I actually step to just using the analytics tab and just on its own? So I did mention that if you do have CRM analytics licenses, that those assets are available to those users. And if you're working in an org that has CRM analytics licenses, you see a couple of additional features here on the left: notifications and watch lists. You also see items within the Browse tab for apps and lenses. And these are things that are assets within CRM Analytics that are also added as extra to the tab. Why don't we jump into an org and actually take a look? So I just created this. This is a pre-release org that I created probably last night at midnight or something. I haven't done a ton to it, but I have basically ensured that the analytics tab is enabled and is visible. So I added the tab to my app here. So I've got my home tab, I've got my reports tab, dashboards tab, just another tab across the top. And what we can see is that this org, I can tell right away, this org doesn't have CRM Analytics enabled because I don't have those two extra things being notifications and watch list. And when we click on the Browse tab, we won't see apps and lenses, and that's fine. So we have the home here, and I can see I've got a powerful search. Also, this org is so new that I haven't looked at anything yet. There's nothing in the recent list, but why don't we go, let's just go back to the reports tab and we'll just run a couple of reports and we'll see how quickly that gets updated. All right, so that's run. Let's run a dashboard. How about that one? And when that runs, I'll just come back and run another report. All right, why am I doing this? Because I want to have, even though there's no data, I want to come back in here and I want to see if this, okay, so there it is. You see how it just updated? When I clicked on this before, the recent items wasn't populated. I guess that tells us that's how quickly recent items get updated, so which is good. So this box here is not just for search of reports and dashboards, but also for just getting to recent items quickly. It looks like I've got a list of recently updated items here. I've got shared with me items, created by me items, and then I've got a list of recents and favorites down below. If we go into the search, the search works in a similar way to, so if I search on, I think the word pipeline might be in here somewhere, it's giving me a short list of search results, and I can go ahead and run that search, and it gives me filters that basically make this search so much more powerful. So if I scroll down here, I can see that there are 15 items that have the word pipeline in it. I was a little disappointed in the beta. The description, a word pipeline in a report description would also yield it in the search results. That's not true anymore. It's just in the titles. So that's a little disappointing. Another thing that they didn't do is they didn't do the coloring. So if we go back to the reports tab for a second, you probably recall, like if we go search in all reports and I come up here and I search on like PIP, you see how there's the coloring that appears. So that isn't in the analytics tab yet. I don't know if it's part of the roadmap or not. But what they did give us is we can immediately filter down and say, how many things in this list have the word pipeline in them are dashboards? Okay, we already knew there was none because we could see the list of 15. How many things are reports? How many things are folders? And then you can go another step further and you can say, who last modified? And what I think is really cool is you can say, I know I wasn't the one that modified it. And you can say, not me. So the default is anybody, but you can say, I want this to be Bill. I know it was Bill said he modified it last week, so you can go find it that way. So you've got last modified by, last modified on, and you can say last 7 days, last 30 days. You can also enter a custom range. Similarly with created by and created on, we just have a whole new level of power. And this is really where the magic happens for large Salesforce instances that might have thousands of dashboards and tens of thousands of reports. The ability to really drill down and find what you need using these filters. So these filters are available as part of the search. They're also available as part of the browse. So you don't even have to enter in a browse term, but you can come in here. Now we can see they're using the word asset here to say, because it could be a mix of reports, dashboards, report folders, dashboard folders, plus CRM Analytics content. And you can see the icons start to become important because we have folders. That's what these blue things are. And then the green clipboard is a report. And then this gas gauge that's kind of pinkish is a dashboard. So we can just come to browse and we can say, you know, I want something that was, you know, created in the last 7 days. Now, this is a brand new org. Everything was created in the last 12 or 15 hours. So this isn't that useful to demo it, but just so that you know it's here. The other thing that Salesforce is essentially elevating with this is just giving you your favorites. Now, I haven't favorited anything, but if I come in here and I favorite, now favorites is a personal setting. Each user can have up to 200 items favorited. You can manage your individual favorites by clicking on the down arrow next to the star. Each user can have their own 200. They can even relabel them if they want. But now when I come back to the analytics tab and rerun this, I should see the couple of items that I've favorited. There they are. And so that's kind of a helpful thing for people to have right at their fingertips. All right. So I'm pretty excited about this, and I'm pretty excited about what we're going to talk about next, which is collections. So to me, this is really a game changer that we now have the ability to create ad hoc collections, not to use the word in the definition, but you know, think of it as you can curate reporting. Pablo, I know you're on the call today. Pablo runs operations for a company. He may have, sales planning that he needs to do to rethink the territories for the new year. He might create a collection that has 7 reports in it and 3 dashboards in it. And he might share that out with users. And it just allows us a new way to create groupings of important and related reporting assets. So we can include reports, we can include dashboards. If you have CRM Analytics licenses, you can also include CRM Analytics assets in your collections. When you create a collection, it's really easy to do. Any user can create a collection. They can share a collection with other users. They can share it with groups, and they can share it with roles. A key thing to know about collections is, so let's say that Pablo creates a collection and it has those 7 reports and those 3 dashboards. So there are 10 reporting assets in that one collection. If he shares it with Bill, and Bill is a sysadmin, Bill gets to see all 10 of those. If he shares it with Mary, and Mary is only has access to 2 folders, one has 1 dashboard in it, one of those dashboards, and one has 2 reports. When Mary looks at the collection, she's only going to see 3 things in it. So what I'm getting at is that collections respect the underlying folder visibility controls, the folder sharing. So Bonnie asked the question, great question, Bonnie. How many items can you have in a collection? I don't know if there's an outer limit. So I don't know that the documentation is like outstanding on the, this yet. But maybe it's been updated since when I first looked. So I didn't see a limit. I think I put 10 things in a collection, and my assumption is that we could just keep going. So that's a great question. So much like when creating folders and sharing the contents of folders. When you create a collection, the creator of the collection can also basically share the collection with other folks, and they can share it as viewer, editor, or manager. In that example of Pablo creating it for his team, for his sales leadership, he may want to share it view only so that other people aren't sort of polluting his collection with other things. Or he may share it with most of the folks on the sales team as view only, and then share it with editor with people on his own team. That is so, Pablo, I'm so glad you asked the question, which is, do you need unlimited edition of Salesforce to use collections? The answer is no. This is for all editions of Salesforce. Actually, I should double check that. It's at least for an enterprise and unlimited. I believe it's in, I'll show you we'll find the answer to that, but I know that it's available in enterprise. And I think it's available in more editions. So why don't we come back in here? We'll answer the question, then we'll go create a couple of collections. So let's see if the help works in this. Sometimes help is a little funky in these orgs. So let's type in collections. And I can't click away until that finishes its search. That's frustrating. Maybe one of you can run a search. Yeah, isn't that funny? Gosh, that I guess I could log into another org and go down that path. I'm pretty sure it's for more editions. So I'm sorry that help isn't working. I feel like it's 50-50 that they work in these dev orgs, but maybe one of you can hunt in your org about, it's usually right at the top of a page. Okay, here we go. Hannah has it. Okay, so it's enterprise performance. I remember there was a P, but I couldn't think if it was professional. So it's enterprise performance and unlimited editions. And I just want to be clear that it doesn't require a CRM Analytics license. This org that I'm in does not have a CRM Analytics license. This is a big confusing point. And I've talked to the product engineer, the engineering team at Salesforce, and said, look, this is kind of confusing. So I'm in an org that doesn't have CRM Analytics at all. There are no licenses to give, and yet we can see CRM Analytics. One of the product management folks confirmed with me that this is available for all users, so enterprise, unlimited, and it doesn't require CRM Analytics licenses. So the Analytics tab does not require CRM Analytics license. Collections does not require CRM Analytics license. I'm going to show another capability that does require CRM Analytics license in a moment. But thank you, Hannah. So if we look at the list of collections here, I created one that's empty. And when creating a new collection, all I need to do is I come to the Analytics tab, and I have the plus sign here. And if I go to create a new collection, all I need to do is give it a name. Let's call this so in honor of being in Boston, the marketing analysis. And you can change the color. You can put in some notes. Really interesting description. And I'll go ahead and save it. Now, once this is created, I'm the only one that sees it until I share it. And I'm the only one that, there's nothing in it, so it's not really that shareable yet. I might spend a few moments, and basically I've got a couple ways. I can click on the search for items here, or I can click on the add button. Before we do that, I'll just click on the down arrow, the action menu. I can edit my collection, and I can delete my collection because I'm essentially owning the collection. So let's go add some items to the collection. And basically we could search for the word pipeline again, because I know there are a few things there. And I can just click on pluses to add, whatever things I want to add to this collection. Now, I would suggest as a best practice that you pay attention and sort of, I think it's unfortunate here, Salesforce had an opportunity. Oh, it is here. Okay. They use the word app, but it's really what this means for Lightning reports and dashboards is folder. You want to just keep in mind that every item you select to put in your collection, like think about what folder it's in and who has visibility to the items in that folder. Because remember, if I share these two items that are in the sales and marketing, or this one here, the sales and marketing reports folder, if I share this collection with somebody who doesn't have access to that folder, they won't see this item. Let's go ahead and add these. So I can add some reports, and I could add some dashboards. And why don't we do, let's search on the word KPI, and there's a bunch of reports. And where are the dashboards? There's got to be some dashboards. How about I search on the word dashboard? There we go. So there's an adoption dashboard and a marketing dashboard. I'll just throw these in. So my content doesn't make sense with the name of the collection, but you get what it is. Now, right now you see these big sort of tiles, and they look kind of stupid. These will be here until you make edits to the items in the collection. At that point, another feature which is coming out in this release is enabled, which is a preview. So a preview of this. So I'm going to go to this report. I'm going to make a little change to it. And let's see if the preview appears. This one has a chart on it. I'm just going to make some little change to it. Why don't I sum, you know what I'll do? I'll go to this amount and I'll sum it and I'll average it. So I'm probably breaking the report now. I don't think it matters. But so I've just added a couple more columns and I'm going to save it. And when we go back to the analytics tab, and we're still on the analytics tab. So I just ran that report and I went in to edit it, and I'm still on the analytics tab. So this points out another feature. Remember how I said that the when you run reports and dashboards on the analytics tab, you stay on the analytics tab. And basically what you have is this breadcrumb navigation up in the top left. So this doesn't exist when running a report on the reports tab. This only exists to help you navigate on the analytics tab. But if I want to click back on this, it'll bring me back to my collection. So let's look at another example of that. If I go to the home tab and I run this dashboard, I'm running it on the analytics tab, and I have the breadcrumbs here to go back to where I was. It's essentially like a backlink. So I can go back to the home tab from there. But let's go back to our collection. And what we should see, and some of the ghosted reports and dashboards may not do this, but I just made an edit to one of the items in this collection. And within some number of minutes, a preview of that should appear. I'm not convinced that that'll happen all the time. It feels a little wonky. So I'm going to just create another report and I'll save it and I'll put it in the collection, and we'll see if a preview is generated. So super simple report. I'm just not even going to, well, let's actually make sure that there's some data. How about that? Okay, so there's a little bit of data. That'll be interesting, more interesting looking. All right, so there's 3 accounts. So let's go ahead and save this. So this is the new accounts report, and I'm going to put it in the public reports folder. I'll save it. And now what I can do, so right now I can't add this to a collection from the reports tab. So on the reports and dashboards tab, you can't add items to a collection. You can, however, from the analytics tab. So if I go to the analytics tab, and you can see that new report that I just created, when I look at the report, there's a new button, and unfortunately they're using a folder icon. I'm not a fan of reusing icons in different ways, but whatever. So this folder icon is the add to collection button. And if I go ahead and add this to that collection, and you see that we've got the similar controls here with the plus. So right now there are 6 items. This will add a 7th item to the collection. I can also create a new collection from a report. I'll go ahead and click save. And now when I go back to home and I go look at the collection, you can already see that, okay, so that other one, the preview appeared. Remember, that was the one. So maybe that took 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever for the preview to appear. And this new report, it's already appeared. So maybe this one's more complex. It took a while to generate the image or something. But these other ones won't generate an image until you modify the item and save it. Sorry, go ahead.
Pablo said it's difficult to gauge how useful collections are without a preview. His 2 cent is adding multiple dashboards and multiple reports into a collection may not necessarily be value add. There are many trees, can't see the forest
Yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Yep. So you see what's just happened, and I agree, Pablo. Um, as I'm creating reports, like since this feature is now live, any reports and dashboards I create, previews will be created for them. And as I add them, I get this little preview. I think the way to think about this is, hey guys, we're doing our annual year over year review, and there are 6 reports and 5 dashboards that we need to do this. And so you're basically curating a relevant group of items, and you can share it out with other users. So I agree. So these things may be sitting in 10 different folders, but we're putting them into one place called a collection. So Cheryl says icon reuse is confusing. I agree. I've also been wondering how to best refer to these collections versus collection variables. Oh no. Yeah, I think, Cheryl, the good thing is that most users don't know what collection variables are. Admins do that work with Flow. But yes, the whole reuse of, I think Salesforce is just totally blundered on reserved words. I mean, there's so many dumb examples. You want to see a really dumb example? I've talked about this one before. But if you go to create a new report, the word here is category, which means basically how you're filing your standard and custom report types. And on the same screen, they reuse category a different way, which means, is this a standard custom report type or a custom report type? And I just don't understand why they would do that. That's the funniest one I've seen, because it's on the same screen to mean 2 different things. But Pablo asked, can tiles be resized? I don't think so. But tiles can be dragged around. So I'm glad you asked that question, because let's say I want to put this one over here. And of course it's okay. It did work. The drag and drop again feels a little wonky, but it did work. I dragged it over and it basically repositioned it within the collection. So I don't think there is a way to resize them. I haven't seen when I've added more that the tiles have gotten smaller, but maybe that's there. I don't think so though. Okay, so what I didn't show is sharing the collection. If I go ahead and click on the share, you have the ability to share with users, groups, and roles. And I don't know any other usernames in this particular org. That's funny. Let's see if there's a Tom. Nope. How about a Bill? Nope. Okay. Laura? Nope. Maybe we look at roles and sales. Nope. I don't know this org well enough, but basically, if I knew somebody, I could share it with them. And by default, the entire org is set to none. So really there's a 4th level, which is no access. And you want to be careful. Like if you have a Salesforce instance where you're running communities, and the Experience Cloud, and you have people logging in from outside, you're going to want to not share this with everyone. So that's the default, that you don't share this with everyone. Oh, I think, Cheryl, it's a good question about analytics collections. I feel like these people need to talk to each other, or they at least need to have a reserved word list, because this is not the only case where there have been some other funny ones in report and dashboard history where they've reused the same thing over and over. So Pablo asked the question, can collections be subscribed to automatically emailed to users like we can with dashboards? Sort of, no. It's controlled by the person who owns the collection. I suppose an admin could add them to a collection, but what you do have the ability to do is assign people by their role. So you could say everybody in sales. So if I had actually taken the time to remember what is the, let's look in setup here, and let's figure a role. I don't know what's been set up for the role hierarchy in this org, but there, Tulane University of Louisiana, what an odd thing. There are no roles. So that's why. So if I had a role for, CEO. So now when I go back to the analytics tab, I think I just need to start that step over, click on share, choose role, and I'm probably too quick, but we should be able to see the CEO role. And then once you've basically chosen, do they get viewer, editor, manager, click add, they appear down below, and you can see the full list of who it's been shared with and search that list as well. All right, so Cheryl has another question here. Can you show what it looks like when you share a collection? Oh, okay, yes. So that's a really good question. Does it generate a link? I don't, I've only ever shared this with non-real users, so I'm not sure. Yeah, so Bonnie, we're going to talk about that next. Collections can be added to a homepage, but only if you have a CRM Analytics license. So that's sort of like a not the perfect answer, but let me talk about that soon. Okay, so you can have a whole list of collections here. I'm going to just create a couple more. So we have marketing analysis, stuff I like. Let's make that one green. And click save. And you could have another collection called really, really boring stuff. And make that one light turquoise. Let's click save. So now I've got this list of collections here. Well, what Salesforce gives us the ability to do is actually pin one of them to the top and also hide collections. So over the years, let's say, keep picking on Pablo, but let's say that Pablo, a year from now is getting ready to plan for 2025, and he still wants to keep his old collections from the end of 2023 to plan for 2024, but he doesn't want to see them in his list. He can actually hide them. So basically I can choose to uncheck one, like stuff I like. Actually, let's hide the really, really boring stuff. So if I click save, it will now disappear from my short list over here on the left. It's still a collection in the system. It hasn't been deleted, but it doesn't appear. It's a nice way of just sort of keeping things sort of in the trunk or something. Now, another thing that we can do is we can pin one of them to the top of the list. So if I go ahead and pin the marketing analysis one and click save, that one now appears as pinned. And what that does is if I come back to the home tab, that appears as my top leftmost tile on the page. And you can see that it's got a pin icon. You can tell from the color and the name that this is a collection, and you have the ability to view a longer list of items. And you've got those previews right there. So Pablo asked the question, why would we bother with a CRM Analytics license? So Salesforce has essentially two more powerful BI tool offerings. One of them, they spent 16 billion acquiring Tableau, very, very powerful, stunning visualizations, long history, lots of people who have those skills in the marketplace, that sort of thing, very, very sophisticated BI tool. Salesforce a few years earlier made an acquisition. It was a product called Wave, and then it was called Einstein Analytics. Now it's called CRM Analytics, and that is additional functionality that can be added within your Salesforce instance, and you can surface the visualizations throughout Lightning in Salesforce you can basically report across systems. You can pull in data from third-party sources. It's a more sophisticated BI tool than what Salesforce gives us, and it lives in Salesforce, whereas Tableau is a tool that is outside of Salesforce. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Pablo. All right, let's just circle back. So we talked about we can include things, we can share them, we've got control over permission levels. Let's talk about enabling access to the analytics tab. So when I logged into this last night, this brand new org, these two checkboxes were already checked. My suspicion is that these checkboxes will not be checked in your orgs when the summer 23 release goes live. I'm not sure. Salesforce is careful about what features it sort of force enables in orgs, but what'll need to happen is a sysadmin will need to go under setup feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, and then report and dashboard settings. And under a section called Unified Analytics Home, there are two checkboxes. The bottom one is enable the unified experience for Analytics Home. That's what makes this tab available. The second one basically turns on the preview thumbnails for Lightning reports and dashboards. This checkbox became visible in the winter release, but it wasn't supposed to. It was a mistake. But now it actually works, which is the preview thumbnails will appear. So once this is enabled by a sysadmin, then either you need to add the analytics tab to your apps, or you need to have a sysadmin basically do that. You can see here, I've got an app called Sales Rep, and I've got leads, accounts, opportunities, reports, dashboards, and then that tab has been added. So as soon as this checkbox is checked, what a user can do is, and when this goes live in your org, you could see, has it been enabled by an admin? You can click on the waffle up here and you can type in analytics and you can see the tab. So the tab for analytics, and I'll just show it this way as well. You can just see it in the list. So an individual user, if they have visibility to that, can add it to whatever app they're looking at, or an admin can add it to as part of a set. So if I go to this Sales Lightning app, the analytics tab is not part of it. I created, as a sysadmin, I created an app called Sales. Of course, I didn't move it to the top, but if I go select that app, the tab appears. So hopefully that answers questions about. Hey, Kyle, can you read the question that's I've seemed to have, oh, there it is. I've lost the Q&A tab.
It's do you think it's practical to keep reports, DBs, and analytics tabs in an app?
I think it depends on what your goals are. Having all three, the benefit of having the analytics tab is it introduces collections. I see us getting to a point where we don't use the report and dashboard tabs anymore. It seems to be pretty fully functional. I did have somebody share with me that they found one thing that wasn't fully functional, which was you can create a report on the reports tab and use conditional highlighting and save it, and it'll show on the analytics tab. But on the analytics tab, if you create a report and you try to add conditional highlighting, it's just not there. So that's the first one I've seen, and there'll probably likely be some other things like that that just aren't there. But I think it's probably, you don't want to freak your users out by just going and hiding tabs that they're used to. It's probably part of a bigger analysis of, what do our users need? How can we make their lives easier? And what's the best way to do that? Personally, I think the fewer tabs you have, the better. Like, I don't personally see the purpose at all of ever having the contacts tab, for instance. And I know that's probably controversial, but you almost never go look at the contacts tab to find a contact. You can either search or you go to an account to find a contact, right? You're probably not going directly to the contacts tab. And you guys can tell me I'm wrong. You might use list views or something, but I like the idea of having as few tabs as possible. And so having all three feels like overkill a little bit. All right, so that's adding and enabling the analytics tab. It requires a sysadmin to check a box. So Peter, I think it's a really good point for recently viewed. I think it's a really good point. That's a reason to have the contacts tab, to use that list view for recently viewed. Sure. Excuse me. All right, so if you do take advantage of this, it is available on mobile. So you have, if you turn this on, it is available on mobile. Just to give one more plug, in the spring release of Salesforce, mobile reporting was given a huge upgrade. And there's some really cool reporting features that are only on mobile. One example of which is, if you run a report on mobile, you can see how much the summary columns have changed since the last time you ran that report on mobile. There's nothing really that spectacular about the analytics tab on mobile. There's nothing, new and different that I've seen, but it is available to you if you use Salesforce Mobile. So we had the question, Bonnie asked the question earlier about embedding collections into page layouts. When I first saw this, I just assumed, kind of like with dashboards and reports, that if you embedded a collection into a page layout, that you'd be embedding a specific collection, like this is the key sales reporting collection. It doesn't work that way. It works. It's sort of it's like reminiscent of how dashboards were embedded into homepages in Classic like 10 years ago. That you add the CRM Analytics collection to a page. So if you drag and drop and you put it in the page layout, but you don't assign what collection appears. It's the individual users, the topmost collection. So whatever is their top collection. So you remember how on the analytics tab, I went in and I managed my list of collections and I pinned one of them. That is my topmost collection. So that's the one that'll appear in the home tab in whatever page layout where I put that page layout component. So it's a little confusing. This does require CRM Analytics licenses. It took me a while to figure this out. You get one error if you have no license and you try to put this component on a page layout. And it's like, what this, it says something like you don't have permission to do this. You get another error if I logged in, I assigned a CRM Analytics license user to somebody. I went to the page, and if the user doesn't have any collections, then they get another type of error on their page. But this is what it looks like when it works. So this is a home page. This is a collection component, and the user who's viewing it, their topmost collection is the one that's displayed. So I think that's kind of cool that the user, it's a different concept than what we have with report components, report chart components, and dashboard components on page layouts. Okay, so, just to sort of throw it out there again, you might consider just using the analytics tab at some point in the future instead of having separate reports tab, dashboard tabs, and CRM analytics tabs. You could at some point consider just using the analytics tab and have less tabs, and also the superior browse and search capabilities, and also have collections. So we've got a couple of other features in the summer release. Dashboards in Unlimited Edition will now support up to 5 filters. So this number has been 3 for as long as I remember back in history, that a single dashboard can have 3 filters at the top. Now with Unlimited Edition, it's going to 5. So that's pretty cool. Another feature that's available has to do with Slack. So last summer, the first integration between Salesforce reports and Slack was introduced. Now from Salesforce, we can post Lightning dashboards into Slack. And what appears if this functionality is set up by your admin is a button on a dashboard that's a Slack button. If you click on that, and you can essentially post this dashboard you basically select the Slack workspace and the channel that you want to have this appear. And then on the other side within Slack, if somebody sees that dashboard, they can click on it, and they can open up Salesforce, that dashboard in Salesforce, and users can also share, subscribe, and view the snapshot. So the subscriptions are kind of cool. And I believe when this came out last summer, it was in addition to the number of subscriptions you're allowed within Salesforce. So I'll say that again. In Enterprise Edition, a user can subscribe to up to 7 reports and 7 dashboards. In the Slack, it's called CRM Analytics for Slack. Unfortunately, it's confusing. You don't need CRM Analytics licenses to use this. So I kind of wish they wouldn't do that, but they did. You do not need special licenses to use this. You don't need CRM Analytics licenses to use this. But one benefit is that you get essentially an additional set of subscriptions from within Slack. All right, what else? So we also have 2 new widgets. So in Unlimited Edition, all of the components have been relabeled widgets. So that's not confusing. And dashboards and unlimited can now have up to 25 widgets. The limit has been 20 for years and years. You can have up to a max of 20 charts and tables as before, and now you can have up to 2 images and up to 25 rich text widgets. So the 2 new types are text and image. On a dashboard in limited edition, you click the plus widget, and then you've got charter table, text, and image. If you click charter table, it looks from there just like when you normally add, as we've been doing for years, when you add a component to a dashboard. So this is what they look like. You can see Happy Wednesday team. I think I probably showed this when it came out in beta. Leanne over in the UK was super helpful in just putting something together to share. And we've got an image over here on the right. And in between the beta release and what's going live, there are a couple new changes, and I was excited to see. The most exciting one is this one I'm circling on here, which is the ability to add links. So this didn't exist in the beta, but is now part of the production release, the GA release. You can have up to 500 characters. You can change the font, the size, the color. You can adjust the format. You can add links. So you can just go crazy with it. And similarly with the image widget, you can upload a file. Every file you upload becomes part of the gallery, and you can reuse images. So here's another image where we can specify the scale of the image. You can set the alignment horizontal, vertical. You can add a hover over tooltip. You can also add alternate text to your dashboard images. All right, so we covered a lot of ground today. That's it for the release. If you want to go dig in a little further, go find the release notes. If you search on Salesforce Summer 23 release notes in Google, you can find the release notes and dig under analytics, reports, and dashboards and see everything that we just covered. We talked about getting ready for a release. How do you know when your org is updated? We talked about the analytics tab. We talked about collections. We talked about embedding collections into page layouts, and then some of the unlimited edition updates for filters and dashboard widgets. We talked about posting lightning dashboards in Slack. So before we wrap up, so Pablo has another question. So unlike the analytics collections, the widgets and dashboards is not live yet. It's when the summer 23 release goes live in your org. So some of the orgs are already updated to summer 23. It just depends on which weekend your update goes live, Pablo. So great question. All right, so my book is coming out. It took a year and a half. It's available on Amazon. It's called Mastering Salesforce Reports and Dashboards. A lot of thinking and learning from doing dojos the last 3 years has gone into this. And it'll be sometime in the first week or two in July that the books will be shipped. So kind of exciting time for me. I do have a class coming up. It's 2 days, July 12th and 13th, a hands-on report and dashboard workshop. We'll just do stuff like we did today. Our next dojo session is June 14th on using multi-currency with Salesforce reports and dashboards. This is kind of a big deal, and I don't know why I waited 3 years to do this, but we'll essentially go through the steps of enabling multi-currency. We'll set it up, we'll add currencies, and then we'll look at the other features to turn on with multi-currency, and then we'll see the impact on reports and dashboards for multi-currency. So hopefully you can join us. We can stay on for another minute or two and answer any additional questions. Kyle, as always, thank you.
Of course.
See if there's any more. Oh, hi, Heinrich. Thank you. Thank you. So I hope you guys all have a great rest of the week. I'm off to Prague to speak at Czech Dreamin', so I'm excited about that.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone.